Welcome back friends. Now friends, in the last few lectures we have learned that what is jQuery UI, what is a user interface. So we have ended up with the theoretical concept of jQuery UI. Now we are putting our first step to learn what is jQuery UI draggable, which means the first interaction part. Now jQuery UI draggable method is used to make any DOM element draggable. Once the element is made draggable, you can move it by clicking on it with the mouse and drag it anywhere within the viewport. Now, syntax to be followed. The draggable method can be used basically in two formats. These formats are following. Now, starting with the dollar, we will open a bracket. We will write selector, comma context, dot draggable, options method. Now, the second one is dollar selector, comma context, dot draggable action comma parameters. Now you are observing that in the first part there are options and in the second part there are actions and parameters. Basically the second one is used to disable any of these. Now here we are starting with the first method, which means the option one. The draggable options method specifies that an HTML element can be moved in the HTML page. Here the option parameter specifies the behavior of the elements involved. $selector, context draggable options. Now we can also use multiple options at the same time by separating them using comma. We can use it in $selector, context draggable option 1, putting a colon in between value 1. In the same way we can use n number of times. Now here are a list of some options which we can use here. Firstly, disabled. It disables the ability to move items when set to true. Items cannot be moved until this function is enabled. By default its value is false. So the disabled command is false by default. Distance. The number of pixels that the mouse must be moved before the displacement is taken into account. By default its value is 1. Delay. It specifies the delay in milliseconds, after which the first movement of the mouse is taken into the account. The displacement may begin after that time. By default its value is 0. So the delay value is 0, which means it can move without any delay time. Now let's take an example of using the draggable by passing no parameter to it, which means that now we are passing no parameter or no options to it. In the further coming lectures we will learn by passing some options to it. So now we are moving on to the Dreamweaver program to program our jQuery UI first program. As I told you that I will use Dreamweaver software as it gives good comfortability. So now friends, here in front of us is a Dreamweaver program on which we are going to code. Now I want to tell you that this is doctype HTML. If you are familiar a little to HTML, then you know every syntax about it. These are all the basics, and if you don't know, no problem, I am going to tell you everything. Now the head part. See, these three links are there, which means http code jQuery.com, themes, UI and everything. Now script source and two script sources are there, which means the jQuery JS and which means the jQuery UI. These three are the most necessary part. If you do not include these three, then you cannot catch anything from jQuery library. So if you want to include anything related to jQuery UI, you have to include these three links firstly. After that you can only start coding anything. So now this is the most compulsory part which we are going to apply in every program. So now let's create a draggable. So I am going to tell you a step-by-step construction that how and where we have to write commands, because the command returning form is not consistent in this. So starting with the HTML part. Always remember that HTML part comes in the body. So firstly we are going to create a div ID. So div, now ID. In the ID part we are taking it as drag. Friends, we can take it in two forms, ID and class. If we are using ID, then we can use only single characteristic of that particular element, or we can store only single part. But if we are taking a class, which means a class is always shown by a dot and a ID is always shown by a hash sign. You will learn further when we are going to apply it. A class can include a lot number, but a ID can include only a single number. So now here we have given a ID as drag, and now we are taking class. Now class is UI and widget. So this is the class which we include. We have to include content too. So in this way we have included a class and this. Now let's give a sign like P, paragraph tag. Hey there, you can write anything here. Hey there, please drag me. This is just a message which will be displayed here on the box or a rectangular box which we are going to prepare. Now here we will close the div tag. Now we will first close the div tag here. Now everything about HTML which we have to include is completed here. Now removing the unwanted spaces. Always try to remove unwanted spaces because it creates a bit confusion for you. And separating body from head. Now I want to tell you that whatever the script part and the style part, which means the CSS and the JavaScript part, which always comes in the head part. Now we are first going to implement some style here. So let's implement some style, which means some CSS part. We have taken style and we have closed it here. Now what styles can we use? Firstly, we will use a hash. As I told you that if we are using a ID here, then we will always use a hash here. Otherwise, if we use a class, we have to use a dot. Now hash drag, because we have given it as drag. Starting with this width, we can set width to 100 pixels. Now putting a semicolon in between. Now creating a height. Height again we can use 100 pixels. Again putting a semicolon in between. If we have to include different properties of same type, we have to use a semicolon in between them. Now what padding? I will tell you that what padding does. Padding we can take 0.5 am. Am is the standard unit of this. Again putting a semicolon and using a background. Background we can take as like green. So we have completed with the style part. Now we'll close it. Now let's move on to the script part. Now what script and style do? Style always improves the visibility of that element, like we can choose color, width, padding and many more things. But script proves the basic functionality that we are going to provide a dragging part. So it is done under the quality of script, which means JavaScript. We will open it and we will close it here. In this way. This part always comes in head. Now what we have to do first is we will start a function, because everything works under a function here. So starting with a dollar, we will do this function. Now I want to tell you that the script part is case sensitive, so as the function is written incomplete, an error is showing in the line 11. So now function. Now after function, first we close this, and now starting with this sign, which means the function part, the internal part is starting here. So creating dollar. Now we will write the ID which we have used in the way. Firstly we use a hash sign starting with this. Now drag, which we have used in the HTML part. we will close it, close the bracket, we will write dot draggable and close this in this way and putting a semicolon here. So now what this means? This means that we have used the drag ID, which is this one, to the draggable part, which means this drag part is connecting this draggable to the style part as well as the HTML part. Now the draggable is incomplete, which means we can say that no options as no parameter is passed to it. Now we will close it. Always pay attention whenever we close it, because this is the very important part as it gives error, as you can see a yellow line on the upside of screen. Now we have closed it and we have to put a semicolon here. So saving it and going for the output. So friends, here in front of us is the output. Hey there, please drag me. Now if we click on this and start dragging it, you can see that as the mouse is moving, this is also moving. So this is the first and the most basic feature of jQuery UI, that we can use the draggables in our website or in any application system. So here you can observe that we can move and drag it anywhere we want. So this is the basic program of draggable. We can change the width, the height, the padding. Now what is the padding? Padding defines the broadness of that material. The broadness is 0.5 em. Em is the standard unit of using padding. So whenever you have to use padding in any of your element, you have to use 0.5 em. Now I want to tell you that how to execute your program on Dreamweaver. Firstly, there are two ways. You can use F12 button on your keyboard to execute this, or you can move here on the globe, click on it, preview in Firefox and many more things. So just click on this and you will get your output here. See, it is draggable. Hey there, please drag me. This is the message. You can provide any message or any functionality to it. So friends, I am sure that you understood and enjoyed that how we can use the functionality draggable with no parameters. In the coming few lectures, we are going to learn that how we can use different options and actions on the same method, which is draggable. So we will soon meet in a next lecture with some good options. Thank you for watching this lecture.